Hey friends, I'm Maxwell Freud, a queer Minneapolis-based game designer and the host of Hatch This Way, a limited audio series where I chat with other queer folks in the tabletop industry to learn all about who they are and how they contribute to the hobby by being their authentic selves. Today I am joined by my real-life friend, James Kniffen. James, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we haven't connected in person in a hot second.
There was that whole thing.
That whole thing, the pandemic, and you're constantly dying.
Oh yeah, always.
Just so people know, you're at Fantasy Flight Games. What's your official title?
So officially, I'm a senior game designer. I've been there for just short of 11 years now.
Oh, yeah. What are a couple titles that you had your name on?
Most notably, probably Star Wars Armada, Forbidden Stars, a little bit of a cult classic, New Angeles, a very culty classic, and Sid Meier's Civilization: A New Dawn, and then most recently, Twilight Inscription.
There you go. So a couple things, a couple little things people may have heard of.
Been around.
So the main question I ask on the series is, how do you identify?
I identify as gay male.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Really basic, gay male.
I'm pretty vanilla. Yes.
So where are you from?
So I'm from little southeastern Connecticut city, right on the border of Rhode Island. 5 minutes from the shore, which might sound nice, but no, it's the sound.
Okay.
Polluted most of the time, and beaches closed, and not that pretty. But it was a nice way to grow up.
Okay. It was a nice way to grow up. Were you out growing up?
Pretty much. Yeah, I came out around age 17, maybe, to my high school friends. And then in my first year of college, came out to my family. And it was all fine. No one had any problems, and it was not an issue at all. I was lucky. I was just at that cutoff where it had become more accepted, and there wasn't as much risk in coming out for my kind of family.
So did you have a reference or example that you knew you were gay? Because that's been a thing. It's like some people just didn't know certain things were an option, and then they heard about it like, oh, that could be me, and is usually much later in life.
I never really needed that external signaling. I realized that I was attracted to men, and I was like, oh, that's the thing. I'm attracted to men. And then there was like maybe 2 years of wondering, of thinking, I'm not supposed to do that. So I guess I'll pretend to like a girl who I'm fairly confident might not be into guys, and so it's a safe bet. And pretended for maybe a year and a half, 2 years, never actually dated a girl in any way. And then was just like, oh yeah, I'm gay. Congratulations, you figured it out. The half of you who suspected.
Oh, God. Do you remember your first gay crush then?
Ooh, yeah. It was on the DARE officer in 7th grade.
This is several things in there that I like about that answer.
Yes. He was very dashing. It was a fantastic beard. And yeah, he was probably in his like early 30s. So maybe a little out of my range as a 13-year-old, 12-year-old.
I would think everything is out of your range. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And then following that, of course, numerous of the cute boys in high school, but they were all straight. That time they were. Who knows now?
They might not even know.
Right? Maybe I still have a chance.
I'm imagining your friends and family being like, wow, you were really into that DARE program.
Yeah. God, you just really tried to get out.
I would go to every meeting. Can I have some one-on-one sessions?
I'm not fully understanding it.
Oh, God. Yeah, I also did the DARE program. I'm from a town of 2,000 people. The DARE officer was the sheriff, and he thought I was like the best child.
Ooh.
I don't know why.
Well,
but I'm like, I also have done very little. So like DARE program, I was like, yeah, I didn't need any of this. I wasn't going to do it anyway.
Exactly.
Like, don't do drugs. Okay.
I know what they look like now. Hooray.
I wasn't really that interested anyway, so thanks.
Yeah. Same.
It was an easy sell. Okay. So what brought you to the Midwest?
So I came out here for college. So originally I was in research science for a while. So I went to UConn and I studied pathobiology and animal science because I was going to be a veterinarian.
Oh.
That was after a year as a meteorology major. So I did at least stick to the pre-vet track the whole time through college after that first year. But then I realized veterinarians deal with humans just as often as doctors do, because most pets have an owner. And unless I was going to do some like strange sort of veterinarian work, I'd be dealing with humans all the time. And that wasn't super exciting. So I was like, I'll do research. That'll be better. And started dual majoring. And then I worked as a microbiology assistant at an aquarium, which was fun. And then was a molecular biology research assistant for a hot minute. And I was like, oh, I don't like this. Let's not do that. Some life events happened that I was like, now is my chance to change if I want to. And I'm still young at 20.
Yeah.
Let's do it. And I looked at schools for game design, and there was one up here that begins with Brown. So I say I went to Brown and got through that degree quickly because it was a 4-year degree in 3 years. And I did not want to be in college anymore. I wanted to start making money. In my last year there, I got a weird sort of 2-week playtest internship at Fantasy Flight Games, the Chaos in the Old World expansion. And I made a good impression on the producer. And then when I applied for my job at Fantasy Flight Games, the producer saw my resume sitting in the printer. And he apparently showed it to Corey and said, this guy's good. That's how I got to where I am today.
There you go. I feel like that is the most successful way of doing it, is right place, right time. That's
always. Yeah, you have to know people. It is super helpful.
Yeah.
And the key to that is playtesting. Just in case that question comes up. Yes, people playtest. That's the way to get in.
That's the secret.
Mm-hmm.
Playtest games. And then you met Nikki at school, right?
I did. Nikki was actually ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I think by a year, maybe a year and a half, they were my TA even for a semester, I believe.
Look at that. And both ended up at Fantasy Flight. They just recruited all the queers.
They did.
Talk to me a little bit about that. What is it like working at a major game company like that?
Oh, things are different now because of the pandemic. It's much more work from home now, surprisingly. But largely it is a lot like a bunch of independent designers who just happen to work next to each other and bounce ideas off of each other. And because it's a company, there are more restrictions on what we can originate. Like pitching isn't as much a thing, especially in the past, like back when I started, and you would have your project assigned to you and work from there. But we work for Asmodee, and there's certainly the assumption that it's like a big corporation, but on the studio level, it's pretty freeform.
Yeah, aside from like the distribution and marketing initiative.
Yeah, that's all the stuff that is more classically a business.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do you feel about being a queer person in that space? Is it?
Oh, it's super comfortable. I mean, we've been pretty queer friendly for a while, like just through internal culture. And that's been just rocketing upward, exponential growth, like especially over the past few years. It's hard to get representation into our games in some degree because we are tasked to our IPs, and the game has to serve the IP. It's tricky to make it serve just the queer community from the ground up. But it's not hard to get queer characters into our games, basically.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you have a Star Wars game, you're very limited to what exists in the property to an extent.
Yes, licensed IPs in particular. It already has to exist. And if it does, we will pull it in for sure. But we have a little more freedom with our proprietary IPs. Arkham Horror, even though it's set in the 1920s, we make an explicit point, especially because it derives from Lovecraft, to be as inclusive as we can be in that setting.
Was that a thing? Was there any kind of like disclaimer or something for Unfathomable when that came out?
I'm not sure.
Maybe I'm making it up. I feel like I heard something about putting a thing in there about, we know this is based on a problematic author, but
oh, it could have been. I'm not sure.
Maybe I made that up. There you go.
Right.
It's canon now, I guess. Do you want to talk about dating?
Ooh.
Have you ever dated?
Spicy. I've heard about it. Yeah, let's talk about dating.
What's gay dating like?
Ooh. I mean, I'm extremely vanilla. So gay dating for me is I go on, like I'm on Hinge or something, an app like that. So
not queer-centric.
Not necessarily queer-centric. You have to splash, right? Let's be an economic efficiency here. Consider this a board game.
Okay.
Assign a number of workers efficiently to each app. Tinder, 1 worker.
Okay.
No more. Scruff, 1 worker. Maybe it's your super worker, but maybe not more. Hinge, you're going to put 2, maybe even 3 workers in because you really want to...
I don't know what Hinge is.
Oh, you've never heard of Hinge. So Hinge it's something like the app designed to be deleted. So the purpose is that it's relationship oriented.
Got it.
Which Tinder and Scruff are not necessarily not that. It's just that they are intentionally freeform, and you get whatever energy everyone is putting onto that.
And I think cis people would be familiar, cishet would be familiar with Tinder, probably Bumble. I don't know what other, Match.com.
Match.com, if that's still a thing. I don't know.
I'm sure it's a thing. And whatever variation of that. And then queer people, gay people specifically, I feel like, have Grindr, Scruff, Jacked.
I haven't even heard of that one.
Oh, it's a thing. It's global, so you're not limited by range.
Oh.
So a lot of these apps are range oriented so that you can find the closest people to you
who you have exceptional compatibility with,
which you may or may not know what they look like. And the idea is to basically meet up with someone as efficiently as possible.
Yes.
And then see where it goes from there. But very much geared towards hooking up, as opposed to Hinge, which sounds like is the polar opposite of more of a long-term connection. Yeah.
Hinge is long-term oriented, whereas the others are casual. Not necessarily hooking up. Sometimes it's just, I've met numerous people that I just play board games with through those sites. I've put most of my effort onto Hinge. I've got some work out there on Scruff, some publishing,
some pics.
That's about it, though. And it's all very tame for the cishet out there who aren't aware. Grindr and Scruff and whatnot have pictures you can lock that are intended to be more risque, if you will.
Or your face.
Or your face. Some in certain communities in particular. Yes, that is necessary. And I don't even have any of those. Mine's all very tame. Even on Scruff, I'm mostly relationship oriented. But let's say you match with someone on one of these apps. What happens next?
Yeah.
You meet up.
Oh, yeah.
And the question is it a first date? Or is it a hookup?
You'd have to decide.
Yes, exactly. So there's that whole
via board games.
That's if I get to first date. Yes. First comes the awkward text messaging back and forth where none of these apps set expectations properly. So you have no idea. Does this person expect me to respond instantly? Or is within 24 hours good enough? So let me tell you, within 24 hours is good enough. And many people do not make that assumption.
Oh, wow. I mean, if they're going through them, they're like, hey, it's a first come, first serve base.
Exactly. So there's my first filter, is if you need responses within minutes, I have a strong idea of what you're looking for, or perhaps your personality type or elements of it, and maybe it's not for me. I'll step back. But let's say we get past that and we get to the first date. Then mandatory coffee shop visit. No exceptions.
Okay.
We will go to a coffee shop. If you don't want to go there, I will manipulate it so that you have suggested it.
Wow.
Yes. Hey, I made new address, so my manipulation is, I can do it. And then we will play board games. But I will be gentle. We will begin with a conversation, and I'll ask all about you. I'll learn many things and remember them. But then I will remember, air quotes, that the bag is next to me that has games in it. And I'll pull one of those.
Yeah. You say that, and then when I mentioned we had played a game, and you said, what? We never played this game. I have to question your memory.
No. I'm still pretty positive we didn't play. I think you played it with someone else.
No one else has that game.
Just don't say that about one of
We literally played through all of BattleCon. Then you're like, let's try this Exceed game. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, it's fine. And you're like, I don't know why you don't remember this.
I was so enamored with BattleCon that I just forgot.
We had played Exceed.
I believe it. We met up 4 times to play through all of BattleCon, right? That was a lot of characters.
It was 4 or 5 times. Yeah, we played through all of them. It was a lot.
But now there are more.
I know. And they're rebalanced.
Let me say that BattleCon is not a game that I bring to a first date.
Why not? What do you bring to a first date?
Oh, Trails of Tucana.
Never played that.
It's a roll and write. So roll and write games by default are the first date games because they're light and small in terms of table space.
I'm terrible.
That's fair. For people who don't know, a roll and write game is like Yahtzee is the one you've probably played.
I guess you do write.
Yeah, you score. I mean, you roll dice and you write down what you got.
Sure.
The modern roll and write games have far eclipsed Yahtzee and are fantastic, by the way. I absolutely love them.
You designed one.
I did. Wow. Who'd have guessed that I would have made one? Yeah. So the Trails of Tucana is a good option. I don't want to burden these people who've already been manipulated by me to go to my choice of coffee shop.
That's fair.
And challenge them with a heavy game. Because I'm willing to accept that other people don't play board games. Like, it's an X, it's not a check in terms of the acceptability list, but that's okay.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, they'll get there eventually. The other value, though, is that it's a personality test. Some people, even a light game, you just explain for more than 30 seconds and they check out. That won't work for me. Sorry.
I mean, it's a big part of who you are and your identity.
Exactly. It's pretty much mandatory. Beards and board games. Those are my 2 requirements. And if only that dare officer was a board gamer.
Could be.
Could be. He's maybe a little out of my age range now. Just a little.
That's right.
But games are a personality test. So if a person takes it too seriously, that's a big tell. Because someone who is extremely oriented to win, not really my type. Competitive, not good. You want someone to want to win because the games rely on that as a basic premise.
You want them to care.
Yes, exactly. And to want to try to get better. My favorite thing to do in a game is lose, because then I know I can do better and I get to explore why.
Yeah, I will always lose most of the time.
Except in Balacon, where you beat me like 70% of the time.
Yeah, I don't know why you're so bad.
Making games is easier than playing games.
I agree. And I'm saying, but you are exceptionally worse than me, which is saying something.
Maybe I was just manipulating you into playing more board games.
I was going to lose regardless.
If someone takes it too seriously, that's a no-go. If they struggle with the rules a little too much, that might be a problem. Maybe you're not the most logical person and I do a robot.
Like a robot.
Yeah, a bearded.
I like a bearded robot.
That's really just the goal right there.
Our bearded robot listener is going to be enamored by this episode.
I really look forward to increasing my following by 2.
That's generous. Who I think is listening to this.
That's fair. Did you never play games as a first date option?
No, but with my recent partner, I mentioned board games and he had just got Gloomhaven and like all sleeved and everything. And I was like, we could play Gloomhaven. We didn't do it on the first date. It was a second date.
Okay.
But no, first date was like we went and got drinks and it was outside. So I brought my dog with, because that's my personality test. If you don't like dogs, I went on a date with someone who was like dogs in my apartment. And I was like, we're not compatible on any level.
That's what we call a hard pass.
That's a hard pass. If my dog can't exist with you, I can't exist with you.
Correct.
Because my dog is the biggest love of my life.
Exactly.
Hands down. I'm sorry. No contest.
You're looking for a runner-up.
Basically. Yeah. No, honestly, when Chewy passed, I don't think I'll ever fully recover from that. Like, I'm fine, but, you know, it's just something like a little part of you left.
Oh, yeah. Loss just is a wound that scabs over. Never.
And I don't know that I'm going to feel that way about any human.
Yeah.
Maybe, but...
Maybe. I don't know. Once you lose someone important.
I mean...
Maybe.
Yeah. Until then, I had my dog and I was dating. But yeah, we did play Gloomhaven. And we like went through the rules. We did it. It was a good time. So that's how I knew it was going to work. But he doesn't do competitive. Like, he will do a competitive game, but he's very... If he doesn't win or feel like it was extremely fair or balanced, it's usually a hard pass. Like, I hate this.
Okay.
We mostly do cooperative games.
Okay. So it's not an issue of interpersonal conflict. It's an issue of self-validation, maybe?
I don't know. I think he gets competitive, and there's always an element of chance or chaos in game. If it's out of his control, I think the element of chance, I think, takes him out of games where he's, it's probably just
totally fair.
Dumb.
Yes, I mean, control is maybe the single most defining quality of board games, whether someone likes a board game or not.
Yeah, I think it's the element of I didn't win and I don't know that I did anything wrong. Therefore, I don't think I really liked that experience. That happened one time when we played Inish, but that's what Inish is. It's just very technical. That's how you win the game.
Yes.
Technicalities, because it's all timing and area control. And like the way this resolves, I technically achieved the goal the phase before you. So I technically win, and that's one of those games. You got to like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is...
Inish was not popular, needless to say.
No, that's right. I mean, it's a fun game, but it is...
I love a good zero-sum game.
You do.
It's good in that sense. I mean, there's a little randomness in the draft, a little bit, but you know what's out there.
So another element of the personality test is how well do they handle the control aspect and the reality that they might lose to me. So I don't play hard and I don't try to win necessarily. But if they lose to me and have that face, there's this turn inward moment when a person who takes a game seriously loses. And you see them lose focus on the outside world for a moment, and they look down a little bit, and their mouth draws in a little bit. Their arms will move in towards their core because there is a moment of vulnerability here. And I've seen this many times. And when I see that in the person that I'm on a first date with, that's a warning sign for me.
Huh. I mean, it depends on their experience and exposure to those experiences, I suppose.
And some people are perfectly fine with that personality. It's my personal preference is that I need someone who's casual because I'm serious and...
Oh, you're the serious.
I'm serious, yeah. I don't care if I lose games. Like I said, I love losing games. Please beat me. I love it. Okay. But...
That's going to be the title of the episode. Please beat me. I love it.
I love that. Thank you.
Interesting. So you're looking for like a very casual person to balance you out.
Yeah. I take things a little too seriously. Not in a mean, like I get aggressive way. Not personal. How do I define this? It's a little more affecting, I guess, for me.
You mean not in games specifically? No. You mean like
in life in general. Exactly. Like when major political events happen. Ouch, that hurts. And it's nice to have someone who is a little more casual about things like that because it's very hard to do creative work when you're feeling down.
Yeah, Seth is very similar. He feels things much more strongly than I do. And he has anxiety, so he just has moments where he needs alone time and goes away. I'm very, probably to a fault, detached to a lot of things. So I guess we balance each other out in that sense.
That's funny because at work, I'm the robot. And I'm the one who's not affected.
I'm sure.
But I am, I swear. I just don't express that often. I don't really understand expression. Yeah, I'm like someone who never needs to express pretty much ever. And so I just have to take it on other people's words that expression is important.
We're probably very similar in that sense. People probably listening to this is the same person. Is he just interviewing himself?
With a slight voice modulation.
Yeah. Okay, so you play games, you figure out their personality.
Hopefully they enjoyed the game or two.
But you're still looking because you're still dating.
What usually happens is it's a continued conversation and then a hug because my dates are very PG or GE even.
But do you want monogamous partners at your goal long term?
Long term, that has always been my assumption.
Or just partner?
Yeah, partner. It doesn't really matter. I'm not sex motivated enough to want an open relationship, as in I am the beneficiary of the openness. So it doesn't really matter. Like, I play games with me. That's so much hotter. Play Fields of Arlo with me and put a ring on my finger.
Burn that peat and get married.
Exactly. So, yeah, relationship, yes. Casual, fine. Again, vanilla, nothing too exciting. I'm an average person.
So, yeah, in terms of toxic app culture, you get terms like where people would put in their profiles their preferences, like very racist preferences of no fats, no femmes, no Asians. People are just like, oh, and this is me. And it's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah. That's what I mean of the racism. Absolutely.
Yes. And they're like, I'm not racist. It's just my preference. And I'm like, that's race.
That is what racism is. Yes.
Sir.
Even if it's systemic racism.
It's just, yeah, it's all this like internalized racism, internalized homophobia, and like the no femmes. Is that threatening to you?
Sure.
Yeah. It's a lot to unpack to get into like where all that comes from. And I do think they're starting to make initiatives towards blocking that out, at least from the public face. I've read articles that they started to block those phrases and stuff. I think. I can't speak to it. If they've followed through or anything, or if it's made a difference. But I do know people have been trying to squash that to an extent.
Sure. I can say there's more positivity now on those sites. I haven't used Grindr. I'm not sure what that is, but with Scruff and whatnot, it is very rare to see no Asians or no blacks these days. The point of Pride is that you take pride in yourself, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
So
that's the intention.
When that message is not being spread, there's a problem. I'll say this. Gays are, and not just gays, queer, the population in general, are a natural community, if you will. We exist. Everywhere, even though people will claim we don't. They are everywhere. We should be like the most culturally diverse.
Yeah.
Why aren't we pulling in more cultural diversity? Not just visual actual practices. And I don't really understand why. I guess it's that to have a shared understanding, we have to rely on the things we associate as defined by the queer community. And that becomes the default. That is the only way to express your queerness. And we lose some of what should be the qualities that we bring into the greatest melting pot on Earth.
I mean, it's very parallel to a lot of the stuff I've been talking about game industry of if we don't have the space for those voices to be heard or to feel safe or invited, you're just not going to hear them. So part of that is making our queer spaces, actually making them more inclusive and accessible and less toxic, so that the more marginalized, even within our marginalized spaces, still feel safe and heard and included. And then we can broaden our understanding of what is a safe, inclusive space and what does it mean to be queer. If you don't make explicit steps to make it safe and inclusive and letting those marginalized voices be heard, you're going to end up with the same games coming out and the same people playing those games and buying those games. And it's not going to change. And
keep having European game designers making colonizer games of areas that they looked up on Wikipedia.
I mean, and it's worked, but I don't think it's going to continue working.
The question is, will it continue working because that population overall of board gamers is growing?
I mean, the white men who like Euro games aren't going to decrease.
How do you create more space is the question.
Yeah. How do you make more space?
And a part of that is just the population of gamers is growing. And so there's more economic power to support games on Kickstarter that are about very specific themes related to the queer community. Like there's that Stonewall Uprising game on Kickstarter right now. And it funded because a space has been created. Kickstarter is a space for that. And there are enough people who are aware of it now that they can exist and market. And there are enough gamers who are willing to support it. And that's the key, is that you have to be willing to support those games.
Yeah, and like you said, about making more space. If everyone's competing for the straight white male who already plays board games, that's a very competitive market. But in marketing, you also have what's called a gettable market. And those are the people buying Wingspan, the games that are also doing really well outside of the strictly white cishet audience. They're bringing in more people. Like you're expanding that space. It's making games that just appeal to other people. And when you expand your gettable market, then you expand your margins. Your profits just go up because you've expanded what you can market to, who you can sell to, who's interested in your stuff.
Right. And you can't emphasize enough the importance of sensitivity readers for games also, and making sure you have community consultants to make sure your games are positive depiction of a community if you choose to design a game for that community. Because I do encourage people who aren't part of marginalized communities to make games about marginalized communities because it helps to market those games. If Uwe Rosenberg made a classic dry Euro game about a marginalized community and does a good job of bringing community consultants and sensitivity readers in to make sure that is depicted properly, that would do a lot to amplify that experience that we're trying to share with people, which doesn't mean don't make those experiences if you are part of that community, but rather don't be afraid to work with big names and encourage them to do it correctly.
And my last guest made a really good point. He said, bringing them on at the end is not soon enough. Bring them on early on to examine the mechanics and theme at the beginning so that it can be incorporated into the core identity. It's not just an added on theme and you're just bringing on someone to see if it offends anyone. Whereas you could hire someone to come on earlier to give their lived experience and cultural input at the inception of the game, and that would help shape how it was made. Another way to think about it, as opposed to, I want to do this thing, so I'm just going to do it, and then I'm going to hire someone to tell me if I did it right or not.
And I mean, the basic game design is you can't change major things at the end.
No, it's already made. Your energy and capacity to completely revamp something. Sometimes when I do play tests for people, they've gotten to a point in the game. Sometimes I'll be like, I think it would be more fun if you tried focusing on this aspect of it. And they're like, that's a different game.
Right.
Yeah, It might be, and you don't have to take my input, obviously, but it might be a better game. Do you want to try and make a better game, or do you just want, at that point, I've spent hours on this already. They're probably not motivated to go back and...
Yeah. If you bring that person in at the end, you're just looking for approval. You're not
Right.
looking to actually serve that person's community.
Yeah. No, for sure. So what initially got you interested in games? Because you talked about what your path academically. So talk to me about your interest in games in general.
So I got big into Hero Quest when I was like 10. And my dad learned how to play. God bless him. He doesn't play board games. Like, he loves cribbage and cryptoquote. Somehow he agreed to learn how to play this and taught us how to play. And he was the DM for us, for me and my best friend. And that was my first like foray into hobby games, let's say. Because Hero Quest for its time was certainly a hobby game.
Sure.
And you could still call it a hobby game now. And then I started exploring. And so I got Dragon Strike, which, for those who don't know, came with a fantastic VHS that was like a 30-minute long thing. Yeah.
That was a thing. Games with VHS components.
And it is something. It is worth watching, even if you can find it only a low res on YouTube. It's great. But that game was another like step forward in terms of like component design and whatnot. And I even bought D&D, though I never really played it. Role-playing games have not been a thing I've successfully done frequently, especially when I was a kid. It was hard to find people to play with. Then I had a falling out with board games. I just didn't play them anymore. Like, I played Risk occasionally, but I mostly just stopped until smash cut to Minnesota. And then I'm in school again. And the school has a library of board games. And I play Arkham Horror 2nd Edition. And I play World of Warcraft, not the adventure game, the other one, the bigger one.
Yeah.
And some game about martial arts. I don't recall what it was or what its focus was. It was like a smaller card game. And then I realized, board games they're cool again. Like, they do fun things. And then I started looking into Fantasy Flight because of Arkham. And that's how I connect to BGG, Board Game Geek, for those who don't know. And then all of a sudden I know about all the board games. And now
You downloaded the whole thing.
Downloaded the whole thing. I installed Board Game Geek on my phone. Just kidding. I didn't have a smartphone.
No, who did?
That was 12 years ago. Who had a smartphone 12 years ago? Right. And the Christmas sales from a few different board game companies allowed me to actually afford games, because at that time I was dirt poor. And now I had a library. And now I'm officially a hobby gamer, because now anyone who comes over sees the games and they're like, what are all these? And then I invite a group over and play games regularly. All of a sudden, I have this tag now of gamer. Like, I've acquired a label.
You didn't mention that tag when you introduced yourself.
It's on my Scruff profile, but...
Oh, okay. With the Y?
No, just regular.
You like to leave them guessing?
Yeah, I want them to wonder. If
I'm here to find people to play games with. I don't necessarily identify as gay.
Looking for a walk-in gamer.
Looking for a walk-in gamer.
You choose the game.
Play the game, leave. You don't have to look at me.
No, play solo. It's fine.
The door's unlocked. We'll finish. You go. I'll clean up.
Yes. We've got our turn.
We've come full circle. Oh my God. Okay, excellent. Cool. And then you got to Fantasy Flight. So what are games that you either play regularly or like bringing to the table or recommend to people?
So you walked past my game library as you...
It was filled with copies of Civilization New Dawn and Angela.
About 80%. It was a shrine.
It was a little self-indulge.
Yes. I sleep on a bed of New Angeles copies. Yeah.
I noticed that you didn't have a bed frame. It was just boxes.
Just boxes. I play a lot of different games. So I don't replay games too often, except when they strike a chord with one of my gaming groups, and then I get to play regularly. But for the most part, I'm initiating, and that means I'm choosing the game, and I happen to have gotten a new game, and I want to play that game. So I don't have, like, asking anyone who's a gamer what's their favorite game. Who knows? At the time...
Somebody asked me that, and I was like, I don't think I like games. When you asked me that question, I was like, I don't think I like any of them, but I be playing games.
Wow. So I do have favorites, but they constantly change. Like Fields of Arla is a beloved classic for me. For some reason, it just strikes all of the right, incredibly dry farmstead chords that feed my soul. Aside from that, my go-tos are roll and writes, like Welcome to.
I didn't realize you liked roll and writes that much.
So much.
We never played one.
We have not played one. You're right. They strike this perfect chord of this sensation that every decision you make is permanent, which is not inaccurate to say of literally any choice you make in your life, because even if you can undo a choice, it has in some way permanently changed your life. But because you are marking that piece of paper, and you have to make a decision right away, and rarely are you allowed to hold on to things to spend them later, or to think, I could spend 2 now, or wait and spend, it'll be 5 later.
Yeah, you don't bank things.
Yeah, sometimes you do. It is not a prominent mechanic to build up large stocks of things because there are no components that you can stock up on. That sense of permanence makes every decision feel meaningful.
Yeah, the only other game that I think has a written record like that I've actually played is Diplomacy, where you end up with this written record of your battle plans.
Yes. And when you can take a sheet home from a roll and write game and it looks good, you've done well. And keepsakes are that's a new thing in gaming in general. It's much more prominent in the role-playing scene, especially during the pandemic when people started making all the single-player role-playing games in which you were effectively crafting, and so you wanted something to be this bastion of memories of all this work that you did, which you didn't define as work, but I would define it as work. And the keepsake is the thing, and you can always look back at that, and just looking at it is like, a memory. I like it. I like a memory of a specific board game I played. And I think roll and write games are the closest we have to that in board games. The keepsake is that sheet. And I wish more games would make their sheets look fantastic at the end. Like Patchwork Doodle, at the end you have a quilt of fun designs if you played with the right group who is going to put the time in to make those designs, because they're not treating it as a hard strategy game. And then you get a fun thing to put on your refrigerator. Roll and write games provide memories.
I've really only ever played them virtually, which has been great, because they do all the math for me.
Yes.
And the markings they make are fine on my paper. It could be prettier, but it's fine. You could just circle like that, I guess.
Yeah. Digital gaming, there's a topic. It's much bigger now. It had to be.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a tabletop simulator.
Some games are much more enjoyable for me digitally, where just the upkeep and mental, like roll and writes. I tried to do a live playthrough on Twitch of a roll and write. I can't. I missed some of the rules explanation, to be fair. I'm like, I can probably pick it up. Like, I can pick up a game on the go usually. And I was like, I can't keep up. You're flipping stuff. I'm supposed to draw on this thing. And it was not connecting for me in person.
Okay.
It was the Isle of Cats one. And then maybe at a different pace in person, it would have been fine. But I've never actually played a roll and write.
Okay, so we're going to do that after this recording.
We have so much to do after this recording.
I've also really enjoyed just app board games. So not like board games that require an app, but apps that are adaptations of board games.
Small World as an app is great. Yeah.
It's done well. I specifically like very small, like not party games, but filler games, which is as a derogatory title, but I don't necessarily like that. But the games that are like half an hour or less generally don't require much table space, which means they translate well to a small interface and don't require what would effectively be layers of interface. Sure. Hand of cards is a layer of interface. So on my phone, I play Cartographers. I play, most recently, just game after game of Cat Lady, because it's perfect and it like does all of the constant dealing of cards for me and counts up my points. And I play a game of Cartographers or Cat Lady in 4 minutes or less and get all of that strategic buzz that they provide just again and again on repeat in a short amount of time, which I can't get as quickly in person.
Do you have a personal goal or mission in terms of when you design a game? Is there something that you try to accomplish or work towards whenever you design something?
I care that it serves the audience that it was intended for. Fun is what matters. That's what I care the most about.
Have you designed a fun game yet?
I'm working on it. I'm getting there. I have a few testers who said I've almost gotten it.
Okay.
I have some design principles that I appreciate. I like games that avoid costs where costs don't need to exist, because all choices already have opportunity cost. So if you don't need like a component cost or cost in money, etc. If it's not adding something thematically, or it isn't very important to the actual design itself, don't put it in there.
Yeah.
Everything doesn't need to cost. The fact that you already had to choose between doing some things is a cost. That's
I feel like that is like an instinct of, oh, this game needs something. What if I add coins?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a simulationist instinct. And I'm not against being simulationist in any way. I want very specific rules on how many animals can exist in a space. It's important to me. But where you can be elegant, and I like elegant and heavy. So a lot of people get annoyed at trying to make a game streamlined or elegant because sometimes it makes the game too simple and people like complex games. A lot of hobby gamers are a fan of complexity. But elegance doesn't have to mean light.
Mm-hmm.
You can make mechanics elegant so that you can add more mechanics.
To me, it's intuitiveness. If a game is complex, is it complex because of the choices, or is it complex because the rules are unintuitive?
Right.
Like, I can do this thing, I don't know why I'm doing it. Mechanically, this is what happens. It's complex because it doesn't make natural connections in my brain synapses. Part of the complexity is me trying to rationalize why I have to do those things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the more that you can squeeze in that is intuitive, the more design space you have in your game, the more it can represent, the more faceted it can be without being taxing. And the kinds of games that I dislike to play are ones that are procedurally complex. And on top of that, there are so many reactions to consider with every move. And now simply playing the game is a job. And it might still be a very fun game, but it's going to drain me of so much energy that I'm not going to get to my other games because I'm always doing that life math, whether this is worth the time I'm going to invest as opposed to being at home playing Monster Hunter. So I appreciate that drive to compress. I like a very compressed game.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I liked about my first game that I sold is it's puzzly in the sense that you have a 2-layer puzzle, but the rules are like go fish, tableau building. So pass a card, pick a card. Those are the rules, but the puzzle's interesting. You have a personal puzzle that affects a group puzzle, and so you need to coordinate those levels without having a ton of rules or no currency or anything like that involved.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that's probably one of my strengths that I've probably developed as a professional creative person is, does this feel right? Which I think is a muscle you do have to develop if you're not a professional creative person. Like I create every day, I get feedback and input on my designs or my edits. Does this feel right as an intuitive? And then I get to apply that to other things that I make. Like when I do directing or performances, that's how I approach everything. Does this feel right? You just need to listen to it, but you need to know what to listen for. I think that's served me into trying to transition into game design. When I do playtesting, I just listen for specific keywords and phrases that tell me this was intuitive. I don't take notes in playtesting and feedback because I'm like, I just need to know, was this intuitive or not intuitive? Regardless of my feelings and what's gone into the game and whether it was a mechanical choice or a thematic choice, or if I don't really have personal connections to it. But if it's not intuitive, I need to fix it.
And so to clarify, when you say, does it feel right? It's, do other people think it feels right?
Yes, game design specifically is for other people.
Exactly.
And that's how I approach my creative stuff. I had the Twitter combo with a friend about, I like to make stuff for me. I'm like, that's fine. People do that, and that's valid. But professionally, I don't make anything for myself. When I approach game design, I'm keeping in mind what I would want to play with my friends, but I have to keep my friends in mind in that case of what is intuitive for friends and family. Is this a game I can just bring out to people and know they're going to have a good time? So I keep that in mind. Not just does it feel right to me, because that might not be fun for anyone else.
Exactly. Yeah, you can make a game that you find fun, design a game for you, and you'll be very impassioned. But if you are not keyed into the audience that you think you are a part of, you may have made something that appeals to no one.
Yeah. And that's my marketing brain of everything I make has to apply to a very specific demographic.
Don't make a game for yourself even if you think you have to ask people, and a lot of people.
And ideally, expansions are interesting, but regardless, it's an opportunity to say, okay, this is how it appeals to like this specific demographic, How can I also make it appeal to a wider demographic potentially too?
Possibly. Yeah, you have to be careful to not say, oh, it's a really simple game and it's great for hobby gamers who love a lot of complexity, because now you're starting to get into this. What is your design and what do you think it is? Because it's not what you're imagining.
So do you have any interest in playing a queer-centric game?
Oh, always.
Okay.
Yeah, this Uprising one. I'm still mad that I missed the suffragette game that was on Kickstarter a few years ago. I really wanted to get that one. But as far as seeing myself inside of a game, I don't feel a strong drive. But then again, I'm a white male. So without having had to put any effort in at all, I've seen depictions of white males in many games. So I never had to see the absence. And within games, like depicting queerness within games is very challenging because you are relying specifically on visuals and text. And that's pretty much it.
Sometimes. I mean, that's true for anything. But do you have any queer games in that library you walked through?
Oh, any specific ones? I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
I'm driven by mechanics.
Sure.
And if it's hard to identify a queer mechanic, I guess, I would love Dream Daddy as a board game. It's like video games. I've played plenty of queer ones, but not in board games. But is that how many are there?
I think that's what I've been uncovering through this and talking to people, especially people who are designers and wanting to make more queer-centric games, is like, how do we make mechanics and themes that are mechanically interested and built on queer identities and relationships that we're not seeing it. Usually it's, oh, there's a queer character.
Right.
You can tell because it says they're on fire. It's usually like an add-on or an expansion. Like you can buy yourself into this game visually. So I think coming up and having more titles that are like, here's a game about the queer, like, why isn't there a Dream Daddy board game?
It's one of the only ones that's like PG enough to be a board game that you could buy at a store.
Yeah, why not? I think Dream Daddy isn't gay in the sense that you can make your avatar female.
Can you?
I think so.
I don't remember. It's been a long time.
My partner started playing, and I think you had the option. And I was like, oh, and you have a child.
Yeah, you can't choose any qualities of your child. I don't.
Yeah, it's just a child you have. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily need to be gay, but it's very queer coded regardless. And people who play are like, yeah, daddy.
Right.
And yeah.
We know what this means.
We know who this was for.
It would be great to see more games of that vein. Is the market large enough that if you make a game that is queer-centric and even suspect maybe that it only appeals to queer people, which is possibly fallacious reasoning to begin with, don't assume that just because you've made it for one community that only that community cares. So is it large enough? I would say, yeah. I mean, that's why Kickstarter is there. It's for these smaller, underserved communities where...
We talked about this too briefly, of a lot of the media being consumed right now is queer-centric. Like Our Flag Means Death and Heartstopper. There's probably a whole bunch more that I can't throw out there. Anything like Taika Waititi does is very queer-coded.
Yes.
And people are resonating with it, and they're watching it, and they love it. And that's what's driving viewership right now. So to think that same principle wouldn't apply to board gaming just means I think you're just not approaching it the right way. Because these other companies that are producing entertainment and experiences that centered around these queer stories and identities are just doing really well. Like, people want them. And they serve more than just a small community, but millions and millions of people are watching them.
Exactly.
And making fan art about them.
Right.
So
there are people outside of the community who want to learn or have just experienced enough.
It's a new story outside of the binary cishet story that's just the same thing recycled. Oh, suddenly there's like a whole new kind of tension and dynamic that's just not really explored in a healthy way usually, where it's not vilified in some way
or where the thing that is different is typically like everyone's a horrible drug addict or something like that. Let's just have a nice story for once. That's just, can I get queer Hallmark, please?
So is there anything you are seeing in the industry in terms of games or designers or publishers that is giving you hope that things are moving in the right direction?
I mean, there are like Artisans of Splendent Vale, Nikki's game that funded very well.
Yeah, that did really good.
Yeah, it's coming out relatively soon, I think.
Yeah, I think it did well despite there being a ton of campaign-driven narrative games, RPG-esque board games that came out around the same time, I think speaks to that there was an audience for it.
Mm-hmm. And also just that someone tried something different.
Mm-hmm.
Let's reward that, please. We don't need yet another
No
fantasy.
cishet characters? What?
But even just it being another fantasy game with your generic dwarf and knights, and there's dragon plastic, and look at the toilet-sized amount of plastic inside of this game. That's associated with what it is. We can have, fun topics that are actually different and informative and just better representation, like Artisans of Splendid Vale. But we have Stonewall Uprising. It's unfortunate that that's all I can think of because there aren't enough out there. Could there be more? The weird spot is just making another board game with one queer character in it is nice that it's happening. A basic slice of life representation, if you will, is sure, it's this random gathering of characters in this game. One of them is queer. That's plausible. It's plausible that there's only one, because if there's only 4 characters.
Sure.
Okay. Bare minimum you've done. Thank you for trying, but is there room to explore where queer is more prominent and not necessarily the entirety of the experience?
Yeah, so one of the concepts I threw out to one of my guests for game design. So you need to make a family. My idea right now is it's a cooperative game, it's a family, but you decide what that makeup of that family is. So if it has 3 adults in it and a child, there's your family makeup. And you chose like those avatars and you decide their background separate from that.
Yeah.
So you get to some control, like you can create or build these interesting definitions of what is a family.
Yeah.
Where it's not just, oh, it's a man, woman, child, therefore it's a family. Let's challenge that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the core design of the game.
And you're interacting with its queerness, which is the step beyond representation. And that's what I want to see is it's nice to have the gay character, but the whole point of the backstory that I'm gay is that there's no forward story of being gay. I don't interact with the queerness beyond that flavor text on the back of a sheet that said, my male character had a boyfriend. I'm not going to crap on people trying to at least put representation in. That's good. To think about representation, I'm glad you're thinking about it. But yes, there is space to go the next step.
There's so much space.
There's so much space.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for chatting with me. We'll continue to chat.
Of course.
We know each other.
Thank you for having me.
As a disclaimer, I just want to remind everyone that we're just a couple of queer folks. We do not speak for the entire LGBTQIA plus community, nor are we trying to. The best way to be an ally is just to keep learning, listening, and remember, we're trying to figure this all out together.
That's right.
That's all I have. If you're listening, know that you're loved and perfect just the way you are. And until next time, bye.
Bye.